I think a couple of key things really is that, for one, it's when you're dealing with startups, it's always useful to know how far along the journey they've been, whether they've been speaking to other funds, how long, whether they've raised before, to get a feel for what experience they've got, because you might expect, and then to also expect that they're going to have made certain mistakes, and to accept that's going to be, because everybody makes the same mistakes. It's weird, just the way the human brain works. Everyone sort of seems to actually naturally do the opposite of what's logical. So it's really to expect those mistakes, but then to try and understand which teams have gone further and have validated things that they can. So probably the best way I could describe it would be to get the typical startup that might come and see us would sort of want some. If they ask me to help with their business plan, as in from the get-go, I'm always a little bit worried, because you don't want to be asking an accountant to help with a business plan. Just let us do our bit at the end. Although I do, it's inevitable. But what a lot of founders tend to do is they'll go with this sort of, I need to do a one-page summary so that I can get a meeting. Once I've got the meeting, then I can get a pitch deck prepared. Then once I've got the pitch deck and I impress the investors, then I'm going to spend the time on the business plan and then put the hard work into it. So that's what I see more often than not. Now, the problem with that is that if you've not done the hard bit first, if you've not actually broken down the business into the fundamental drivers and fundamental parts of it, you can't then produce that decent pitch deck, and you can't then produce a decent summary. So I think that it's to try and assess how much of the hard work that they've done, and the difficult things, because if it was easy, everyone would do it, sort of thing, So, so if I'm a investor coming along, and everybody can put a pretty pitch deck together, and everybody can draw a hockey stick. But if you're asking me about sort of specific questions, you can quickly assess whether what that person has put together has got any real meaning behind it. So if to talk about it very generically, there'll be some numbers in there. And if they talk about, for example, that there's a marketing spend of X, well, what's that based on? There's a recruitment plan. There's a staff wages of this. What's that built on? So, for example, what some people will do is they'll put wages in at a flat rate, just based on a certain growth perspective or as a percentage of sales, rather than somebody who might think through a hiring plan, have researched the market costs of those hires, factored in recruitment fees on those hires. And then if you ask a question about where's that number come from, and somebody says, well, we're going to need X people, we're going to need 3 front ends, 2 back ends, and a marketing head at this point, then we're going to hire X, Y, Z. And they'll know those kind of things, and those questions will be validated behind the scenes, and they'll present numbers which on the face of it might look very similar to somebody else's, but they're actually born out of, even if those numbers aren't necessarily going to be correct, the hiring plan isn't going to follow the plan, but they've taken the right approach and thought process to validating any assumptions. It's the buzzwords that everybody uses.
It sounds to me like it's really just finding the because behind any numbers that are in there. We've put this number in here because of this process that we went through, because of this research that we did, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the other thing as well is that what everybody's moving towards a sort of SaaS model these days, and so everybody's trying to value the company on multiples of MRR and ARR and all that kind of thing, which is fine, and that's the way it is. But what the other key thing that I see time and time again, there's a couple of, I think Andrew Chen wrote a blog post about it once, and I think Thomas Tungus has wrote one, and Christopher Jans, and they're all along the same lines. So what a lot of people will do is that they make this assumption that the investor wants to see something. They've read a few blog posts and they've read a few articles. The investor wants to see X, Y, Z to justify the valuation. Because what happens is that, a startup wants X amount of money to spend, and they want to give away Y percentage of equity, and you multiply one by the other, and that gives you your valuation. So then they go away and they find out, right, how can I justify that valuation? So then they go and create some kind of sales line that plugs the gap. So it's what I sort of call a bottom-up financial model. They start at the bottom, work out what they want to cost, work out what they want to raise, then they just go straight to the top and shove a number in the top to justify that. So if you look at it from an investor perspective, what a smart start would have done, because this is the hard bit. They'll have assessed the market, they'll know the total market size, They might know their addressable market, might know their various niches within that market, which of those they're going to be able to address at certain points along the journey. And then that's more sort of top down. So you're looking at your market, how much you can raise, you know, how much of that market you can reach. And then that gives you your sort of available revenues that you can then, you know, then achieve. Not only that, what the real good teams do that I see is that the question is what drives that number? You know, that's what this all comes down to. You know, where's that number from? Where's it come from? So a good team would have got a revenue line which they can, which could feed back to some kind of, I'd probably say like activity, a driver. So we want to get, so if X% of market share is a good start, but if they've really thought through, oh, we've tested and validated X number of Facebook spend generates this number of hits. We've got a conversion rate of this. We've got an average customer spend of this. It's got a cost of servicing, you know, that kind of activity-based revenue growth really excites an investor, you know, and they because it's validated, it's repeat. The point of a startup is to get a repeatable business model. That's what you're investing in, trying to get something that's scalable. So if they're actually undertaking the activities that's the basis of a repeatable and scalable business model, that's what you want to see. As averse to what most people do is work out how much money they want off you, and then decide how much equity they want to get away, then try and build up. And if you can quickly assess who's put all the hard. I've gone into pitch meetings with clients and seen that hours and hours and hours that have gone into putting maybe 6 cells on a pitch deck. But if somebody asks about one of those cells, then the founder could talk about them for the next half an hour. And that's what's impressive. That's when you know you've got somebody who's done the stuff. When you ask them a question, they've thought about it. They might not have the answer, but they could tell you why they've not addressed it, or what they're doing to address it, or what they have done.